In this video, I'm going to show you how to take long exposure photos using the Nikon D3400's bulb mode. Now, getting into bulb mode is the easy part. The harder part is actually taking long exposure photos, and taking them requires a good tripod. Now, I don't have a tripod right here to show you, but I put a link down in the comments for a set of tripod legs and a ball head that I would recommend you use when taking photos. The other thing I would recommend you use is a remote that you can buy, which you can plug into the camera. And the reason for a remote is that it allows you to take the photos without touching the camera, which will avoid any camera shake you might introduce from pressing the button. And I've got a link to a remote option down in the description as well. So if you're going to take a long exposure photo, the only option you have is to put the camera into manual mode, because the only place you can access the bulb function is in manual mode. And if you're not sure what the bulb function is, it allows you to take a photo for as long as the shutter button is pressed down. The shutter speed is a function of time. So as you can see right now, the shutter speed is set for 1/10 of a second, which means when I take a photo, the shutter inside the camera will open for 1/10 of a second and then close. If I set it for a longer shutter speed, let's go to something demonstrably longer, like 2 seconds, you will hear the difference, because when I press the shutter button, the shutter will open and it will stay open for 2 whole seconds and then close. So the speed is limited on pretty much every camera to 30 seconds. And if we go and keep going all the way back, you can see right here, 30 is the last shutter speed that I get to before I get to this thing called bulb. And you might be thinking, well, why couldn't I use it in shutter priority mode? Let's just go over to shutter priority mode and see what happens. When we spin the back dial all the way over, it stops at 30 seconds. You're not able to access the bulb mode function in shutter priority. So once in manual mode, you can set the shutter to bulb mode. And once it's in bulb mode, the photograph will be taken for as long as the shutter button is being held down. Now, I'm physically holding the shutter button and I'm moving the camera, which means this picture is going to be terrible. But that's why I recommended the tripod and the remote earlier. And one of the nice functions about these remotes that you can buy is it will have what's called a shutter lock function, which will allow you to press the button down and then slide a little lock up and hold the shutter button down for you, so you don't have to stand there and do it yourself. Now, there's one other menu setting you would actually want to change when using bulb mode to help reduce shake in the camera. For anything in the multiple second range, you would want to change this setting I'm about to show you. So if you go into your menu system, you're going to go into the camera menu, and what we are looking for is the VR, or vibration reduction setting. That's the image stabilization. This lens has image stabilization, but there's no switch on the lens to turn it off. It's controlled by the camera. And when you put the camera on a tripod, you actually want to turn off image stabilization. See, the idea behind image stabilization is as you hold the camera and move inside of the camera's lens, there is an element that will move on like shock absorbers to allow the picture to be as sharp as it can possibly be. But if you're putting the camera on a tripod and the camera is fixed and it's solid and it's not moving at all, then having something inside of the lens moving can actually make your images blurry. So what you want to do is find this optical VR setting and go in here and turn it off whenever you put the camera on a tripod. Now, when you turn this off, it stays off until you turn it on again. So if you're shooting normally again, you'll want to come back in here and set this back to on so that you can get the advantage of the image stabilization. So that's how you get into and use the bulb mode and the settings you would want to change for it. Now, there's one other function that we want to take a look at, and that is the time function. The time function is very similar to the bulb mode, but the mechanics of it work slightly differently. With the bulb mode, you hold down the shutter button, whether it's on the camera or with the remote, and for as long as that button is held, the camera is taking a photo. And when you release, it stops. With the time mode, you press the shutter button to start the photo taking, and you don't have to hold any buttons down. And when you're done taking the photo, you press it again to end the shot. Now, again, this is going to work best with a remote, because if you're pressing the camera itself, you're going to introduce some movement, which is going to make your image blurry. But the time function can be a little bit easier to work with than the bulb mode, especially if you don't have a remote. Now, if you have any questions about the D3400, check the playlist to make sure I haven't already answered it in one of the videos. And if I haven't, let me know down in the comments. And in the next video, I'm going to show you how to use the auto ISO function for the D3400.